Okay, Chair Calabria, we are live.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll begin in the time of the meeting beginning is 6:04 p.m. on February 23rd. First order of business, I believe, is roll call.
We do have one more budget committee member popping in right now. Okay.
Good. Okay. Welcome, Councilor Mann.
Okay. Roll call. Chair Calabria.
Here.
Vice Chair Carson.
Here.
Corrigan. I think, let's see.
I'm sorry, here.
There you go. Okay. Grindy.
Here.
Dodds. Not here. Zeller.
Here.
And Newt is excused. Mayor Buck is excused. Wendland.
Here.
Wynn.
Here.
Burdick.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, Boop. I believe he is excused. And Mans.
Here.
And Raff is excused. And it does appear that we do have a quorum.
Okay.
And then I just did want to mention that we did invite the alternates to attend, and in attendance tonight is Ronald Brake.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. The first thing I'd like to do is thank city staff for the preparations and administration. This always takes some preliminary work, and I know this sounds like just flattery, but I mean, all of you on this call know how fortunate we are to have this staff, and I just say it's a pleasure to work with Anthony and Jennifer and Sean on this program. So I always learn something. So I just want to thank them very much again for everything they're doing to help us. Jennifer, I thought, you sent me the housekeeping items, and I thought it might be worth spending a minute just to go over them very quickly, or at least some of them, not all of them. Do you agree, or do you think that I should just not worry too much about reading them now?
Sorry,
Really?
I think we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
It has to do with when we're being recorded and all that sort of thing, when the breaks occur. So
I think, right, if you just want to check in with people later if we need a break.
okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, the next order of business is the approval of the Budget Committee meeting minutes for October 28th, 2021, our last meeting.
I move we approve the budget minutes.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Mans. Motion made by Member Corrigan and Councilor Mans. Any discussion? I don't see any hands. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposition? It passes unanimously. The Budget Committee meeting minutes were approved. The next item of business, I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes on some of the feedback from the last meeting. So can you bring that up, Jennifer, that exhibit? It's a one-page exhibit. And I thought there were a lot of good comments that came back. I can say that, as you might recall, we have a request for feedback at the end of these sessions, and we did receive some. It's a little bit hard to read that. I don't know if you can make it bigger. And I've kept the responses anonymous, but we did get 5, and there were 4 questions. And I'll just cover in response number 1, there was a suggestion. You can see for question 2, that and this is something we haven't discussed yet, but there might be an opportunity to use the dashboard when we go over some of the financials as just sort of an additional tool to help us understand those. Another comment, if you look at response number 4, there was a comment there about the advantages of meeting in person for question 4. I think that was something that was expressed elsewhere, and I think that many of us would agree. For this meeting, we just thought we would do it virtual, and hopefully maybe the next time we get together, we'll be in person. Response number 5 had some details in it. And if you go to question 1, what was the most valuable part? Response number 5 indicated that understanding the nature of the budget deviations was very helpful, and it was helpful for me too. The response number 5 also indicated that in some cases, maybe going line by line may not be necessary. Of course, this is a matter of which personal preference you may have for going into more and more detail. And finally, I just wanted to mention that this person indicated that there might be a difference in the benefit that can be derived from an elected member versus an appointed member, and that there could be we might prefer to structure a different approach to satisfy both needs, and that's something we can kick around as we approach the next meeting. So overall, I didn't go over all the other comments, but I think that generally the comments were favorable. So I don't know whether everybody was just being polite or whether they really loved what they did. But anyway, it's appreciated that they took the time to respond to that, and we will be asking the same thing after this meeting. So at some point after the meeting, please have a look at those 4 questions. They're the same 4. In the spirit of continuous improvement, we'd like to listen carefully to your preferences and make sure that your time is well spent. Okay, now getting into the meat of the discussion, we have an item to review budget actuals as of the 31st of December 2021, and I believe Sean will be leading us through this part of the meeting.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'll share my screen. So right here is the document I did share with everyone. I get feedback last time was that it would be helpful to have just use reports that came out of the system and then ones that had headers on every page. So I decided to go with our revenue and expense report. Basically, this is the current 2-year budget. Period activity is always going to be this month here. So this is what actually happened in December of 21. This is a year to date to this date that I ran the report is right here. And then this is the amount of budget remaining. What I wanted to do on this first page, though, is just kind of highlight this number right here. It's the general fund revenue. So this really is the percentage of where most things, if things are linear, this is where they should be. Because of inflation in year 2, it's not exactly 25%. It's just slightly less. So that's kind of the ballpark number that we're looking for on linear things. Capital projects are not linear, so that won't happen at all. The other thing I want to do is I did put all of everyone's faces on my second screen. That's why I'm kind of looking to the right now. If you have a question, just go ahead and ask it. I can see everybody right now. So it's not like there's 100 people and I can't see. So, or just start talking and, interrupt me. The other thing about this report, it's actually 3 reports, and it's just the way that we're structured in our system. So pages 1 through 20 of the 46-page document is the general fund of that, and then the rest is 1 page per fund after that, like the street fund or the water fund or whatever. Page 1 is the general administration. The next 10 pages behind it, 2 through 11, are the departments that make up the general administration. I thought that would be very helpful to know, how is finance doing? How is IT? How is that? We're budgeted as the general administration, but I did break everyone out individually so you could see that. And then after that, it's like the library, the ACC, parks, police, fire, they're all lumped together, but they're in the general fund. So just some housekeeping on what this report is going to give you. There isn't, in this one, the last one I gave last time, if the things were negative, it was good. If it was a revenue, but bad, they're all should be positive. So this should be a lot easier for everyone that they're used to looking at it. The one here on this is just because this is us allocating out the general fund revenues to the other departments like police and fire and that kind of stuff. So, so that's really how this report is going to go through. There's only about 8 items I'm going to highlight. I'm not going to go line by line through all of them. I'm just going to highlight 8 that I thought would be interesting. You might find interesting. And other than that, we'll move on to the financial policies pretty quickly. So if we move to page 2, what you're going to see here is our first department within the general administration is all the general fund revenues that come in that aren't department specific. So it's not like the this is basically our property taxes, our franchise fees, and things like that. It really isn't the police 911 contracts or the fire contracts and stuff. Those go direct to those departments. What I want to show here is in our intergovernmental, we had budgeted $2.4 million for the biennium. We're already at 4.8. And what that really is we've already received our first half of our ARPA funds that need to then be brought to as a budget supplement and put back into the budget and the expenditures, how council approved it a few weeks ago. So I'll be coming in the next couple of months to do that. But anyways, just so we're at almost 200% in the first 6 months of a 2-year budget. So just, I found that one to be interesting. Next, we're going to go to page 18. Page 18 is fire. I don't want to go to this one. What you see here is right now they have spent more money than they have gotten. By the end of the year, they'll be fine. But right now they have, and what this cause of this primarily is had so many firefighters retire last year that a new whole group came in. And so while those new firefighters were out training for a few months, all of those shifts were covered by overtime. We didn't really budget for that 6 months ago, a year ago when we were building this budget. We didn't know that many people retire. Usually one retires and they can absorb that. And in this case, what you're going to see is that's what's causing the personnel services to be not at that 24 point something, is that much overtime for 6 to 7 new firefighters. So yes, Ms.
Are we seeing that level of unanticipated retirements in more than fire? I know we've certainly, I think, seen in police, but are we seeing it across the general administration, or is it just particularly heavy in fire?
I'm not sure about the returns. We are seeing a lot of retirements. I can get back.
Sean, do you want to let me take that? Yeah, we are seeing a pretty significant volume of retirements right now. The thing that's unique about fire is we can't opt to leave the position vacant. We have to backfill with overtime. So you'll see a turnover in a couple other departments, I think, at the end of the fiscal year, but you're not going to see the consequences in the same way that you do particularly in the fire department. You're right, also in police, but it shows up differently in police because we hire in advance of the retirement in police because it takes so long from the time you hire to have a police officer fully functional, whereas fire, their academy is much shorter. So yeah, I think we're actually seeing that silver tsunami we've been promised in the public sector for such a long time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Let's move to page 21. 21 is the City Hall project. And this, we budgeted 1.5 million. We're at 2.1. Basically, we met, as you can see here at the beginning, our beginning balance is $1 million more than what we anticipated. So we had budgeted that they would spend about $8 million. That's what we estimated out of this fund. Or so it was out of Laura, but out of this fund, they spent $7 million. So we need to do a budget supplement to roll the rest of last year's appropriation to this year. The project is still on budget. So I just want to point that out. Next, page 43, we jump a bunch because they're pretty much just the linear 24% that we were looking for. Here is, so now we're actually to the Laura funds. East End, the debt service is a little bit higher for a 2-year period for the first 6 months than you'd expect. What happened is we went to looked to see if we could refund this bond. And then we saw that, to our surprise, that we had a little bit more money in fund balance. We were actually able to retire the bond. And so you'll see that as just us retiring the 2011 full faith and credit bonds. So we saved the city quite a bit of interest. Or Laura, you had a question now?
Yeah, I was just sorry, I'm lagging, but going back to the capital expense for City Hall.
Okay.
If a person were an observer were trying to tie this back to the CIP, would they be able to link this report with the CIP?
Yes and no. I mean, every budget, every capital outlay line that we have budgeted number. So that 1.5 million is in the CIP. Yes. And it's in the summary of the CIP. So yes, that one's, but if we have to make a budget adjustment because projects are taking a little bit longer, or the payments are taking longer. The project didn't take any longer, but the payments to the contractor, it wasn't exactly when we thought it would be. So those timing differences that you won't be able to tie back to the CIP, because we only update that once every budget cycle. So every 2 years, we'll update the new CIP. But we will definitely be updating our budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So moving on to the next page, 44, the capital projects. I just wanted to highlight, this is, we had 0 budgeted in capital outlay for the East End. We had to buy a building on North Anchor on the land. So it was a land improvement we're going to tear down. But this actually was budgeted up here in the materials and services as a potential cost. When we did it, it was before we sold the land. So it's our asset right now. So we had to budget it differently. So that's all that was. Going on to 45. This is the Lake Grove. Oh yeah. So this is the Lake Grove urban renewal. And so what I wanted to highlight here is property taxes. We're only at 35%. Property taxes should be in the mid 40s at this point if we had budgeted right, because we get 91% of our property taxes for the year in November, end of November, beginning of December. What this is showing is that I had to go back and look at our projections and that. And so what we did is we estimated the springs to come in a little bit higher of an AV value. It's off by about $17 million of what we thought we were going to collect, beyond the rolls. And so what that's going to do is push basically paying off that district out about a year, for that amount, because it's 17 million this year, so, of AV for the next 10, 12, 13 years. So I just want to point out that, this is coming in a little bit lower than we had expected. And Mercantile came on about March, but was assessed in January. So everything's really pushed out a year. So we're actually collecting that one a year later than we had anticipated as well. So, and then our final page is 46, and this is very similar to the City Hall project. We thought we would have paid the contractors a lot more by the end of fiscal year 21. We need to roll over some of that appropriation from last year. The project's on budget. It's which fiscal year or biennium that it's in. So you can kind of see the beginning. We estimated 9 million. We came in at 3.5 million. So that's just project costs that need to be paid this year that we anticipated paying them last year.
At what point do we do that, Sean? In terms of doing the shift from one budget to the other?
Usually we do it a little bit earlier in the year. This year, we're just a little bit slower. We're kind of
okay. It was more of a general not being in public sector finance.
Yeah, no,
question.
Usually we do it as soon as we find it. I found these when I was preparing for this meeting. So, but now we'll have to publish it. And that takes a couple weeks. I got to get on the council. That takes, so it'll be done in the next 4 to 8 weeks. But
gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the budget to actuals?
So Sean, just net, how would you summarize where we stand? I mean, I mean, I have a takeaway that I would say we're fairly very close to the budget, and a couple of surprises, but
Yeah, no,
nothing.
we're generally there. Like the ones I pointed out was like the one that we're probably not where we thought we would be is the Lake Groves. That one. I mean, we thought we'd have another probably $500 to $1 million in property taxes this year, but we didn't. And like I said, that's just going to go on for the next 14 years before, until we pay off the district. But other than that, we're pretty close on most everything. Our property taxes are looking really good. I mean, for the general fund, our income coming in from the utilities is right on. I mean, everything is pretty much as we anticipated. Like I said, I highlighted the 8 things that I thought were a little off, but where you started in the first 6 months too. So with capital projects, they kind of shift around a bit. So those are the ones that are the harder ones to figure out. But personnel costs are, besides fire, are usually pretty easy to guess or track or project.
Do I recall correctly that the last time we talked about these types of issues and how we were relative to budget, it seemed like the only ones that we were just off a little were really small accounts like the tourist fund and the trolley, because tourist activity was below expectations, and so that was not really any kind of major concern. And when I'm reading your comments, we don't have any major concerns right now either.
No, and we did, and knowing with tourism, it was because it's based to transient lodging tax, and so we know that now. So we didn't budget nearly, off of a really our highest peak year that we ever had. We're budgeting more on the trough that we've just been working our way through, and then we're actually right on that too. Martha and I were talking about that, and she's like, "What?" So. Any other questions? Are we ready to move on to the next item?
I think so. I don't see any hands raised. So shall we move into the policies and try to learn a little bit about those?
We thought the last stuff was exciting. Here we go. Let's see. Just take me a minute to pull it up. Okay. And let's see, it's asked to use just the website last time. So here we go, and how we would find it. Let's see. Hopefully it works. Here we go. So we would, this is the way I go, but go to government, go to finance. And over here on the left is kind of our things, financial reports. And right over here is the financial policies. And here are the financial policies. So I'm not going to read all of these. Hopefully no one expected me to. But I will go over kind of why we do them and what it means for us. So basically, our financial policies, some of these are mandated by other governments like the state, like different ORSs and that kind of stuff. And then others, they're just best practices, and they're now, approved by council. So there are now our financial policies. So if we start here with just the general policies. Can everyone see this, or do I need to make it bigger? Or? Okay. So basically the first one is really getting about is our budget process and our goal setting. So council goal setting really pushes. So the council's goals pushes our budget. There's our basic programs that we're going to, fire and police and parks, and there are basic things, but there's other goals that they come up with that then get built into our budget, and that's kind of what this one is getting at, is what is driving it. And then the relationship between operating and capital budgets. This is really talking about one-time money versus ongoing funds. So like our property tax revenue, that's ongoing revenue. So, we're paying for police and fire and parks and, our big ones like that. That's ongoing. So, if we do a program like that, we want to do that. But one-time funds like these ARPA funds that are coming in. Those are one-time funds. We're not, this is the first time in 12 years they've given us money that I've been here. So, we're going to do programs that are only, for the one period or the 2 periods that those funds go to. We can't start a whole new program. Like, let's start an economic development division, and then we're going to fund it with art, because there wouldn't be any funding in the out year. So this is really just getting at, spending one-time money on one-time items and ongoing revenues. The third one is really just talking about ongoing process improvements. You don't just do the improvement once, just you keep it going, Number 4 is kind of a big one. And this is kind of something that our previous city manager kind of really brought home when we started doing our cost allocation, even within the general fund. So the idea is, what is the true cost of running a certain department? We used to, if it was in the general fund, we figured out what the cost allocation would be for all the general admin to police, but it really didn't give the true cost of police, because, it didn't include any of the other things like, the finance stuff that gets done to it, or their HR element, or their IT stuff. None of that was ever in. So the idea is to really show the true cost of different functions and treat them as much as we can like enterprise funds. The 5th one, let's see. Oh yeah, we'll talk about that one more when we get to the fund balance reserves that are required. That's a whole separate section, but that's really what it talks about. And so, and in a way to be kind of efficient and that kind of stuff, number 6 talks about coordinating with other government agencies. So we did this with the LO Tiger project. I mean, I can tell you, we are spending a lot less money in the process and the ongoing costs of producing water, even though we're producing more of it. Our portion of it is less than it used to be before we had Tiger as a partner. So it's just looking at efficiencies with other governments and that kind of stuff. Yes, Al?
Yes, Sean, again, I'm lagging you, I'm sorry, but I wonder if it might be illustrative. Number 4, as you emphasized, that one I think is important, because a lot of the accounting and the structure of the budget is considered in this enterprise sort of format. And it would be helpful to have a look at one just to show us how it works. I mean, I'm thinking that an analog for this in the for-profit world might be a cost center. In this case, we have a fund where we have revenues and expenses and so forth. Would that be helpful, or do you prefer to just proceed?
I can. Like I said, let's see. I mean, we can pick any fund, because like I said, we really run our general fund the same way. So, I mean, I can pick a department within the general fund, or I can just pick
I just wondered if it might help for those that aren't extremely familiar yet with the structure of it. If you think that we should just proceed, that's okay too. Okay,
so I mean, basically what it's saying is that we should put all of our revenues up here and put all of our expenses, but at the same time, we need to look at everything. So the general fund revenue, so we're just going to do police because they're big and easy. This is money that is actually like property tax money and franchise fee. That's just that non-departmental money that comes in. And then you have all of the money that department actually gets on its own through services to others or things like that. So, sales and services, this is the 911 contracts with Milwaukee and Westland. And so you can see the bulk of it really still is the property tax money. So what you're trying to do is look, okay, so this is how much money we have for the biennium. And then you're gonna look at the expenditures that come out of it. And also in this materials, to make them more like an enterprise fund, we are putting the general administration costs back into it. And so you really do get the true cost of what the police department is. You're not getting just what their direct expenses are. You're getting all the overhead, like myself and stuff. So that's what you're getting here. And that number 4 is really getting at trying to get what the true costs of all of these different departments are versus just budgeting Like if you go to a different jurisdiction, you're very likely to just see this portion right down here. They won't put most of this stuff up here and run them each as their own separate little business to really get what they're doing. I mean, that's kind of what that one's getting at.
So the way I perceive this, you tell me if I'm wrong. It's basically the analog for, again, in the for-profit world would be you're making a rational allocation of overhead costs. Some people call it burden, and so forth, into the operating unit, so you can get a more comprehensive view of what the actual cost is. Is that a correct way to see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The rest of these were kind of pretty straightforward, you know. The last one really basically is just making sure we can fund our future obligations on our PERS, but they're pretty straightforward. Any questions on these, or can I move on to the next ones? Sorry. I know I'm moving it around. I remember just having something with Anthony the other day, and he was moving it too much, so I'm going to stop moving it until people can see. Yeah. Yeah, number 7 is just say that we're going to go look for grants. I mean, that's okay. Yeah, we do that as much as we can. We don't get nearly like a school district where half their funding is grant funding, but you know, if we can get grants, we do. And then initiate, encourage, and participate in economic development efforts. We try and we do. Okay, sorry, I got to scroll up here to go back. Now we'll move on to the revenue policies.
Hi, Sean, I have a question.
Yes.
So when it comes to grant monies, that is then outside of the budget, right?
No, it needs to be budgeted, but each department usually goes after grants. Like for the Boones Ferry Road project, they got a $4 million grant from ODOT for that project. I don't know, 8-9 years ago, we got a grant from OEM for the dam as with Lake Corps. So Lake Corps really kind of went to bat, but we got it and passed it through to get a gate that was twice the size. So we wouldn't have flood, you know, the same flooding of 96 again. They could let more water out. But it does have to run through the budget. We didn't put the ARPA funds. I think this is where it's going. We didn't put the ARPA ones in there because one, we weren't exactly sure how much we were going to get, and we didn't know where we were going to spend them yet, or when we were going to get them, because in theory, we're supposed to get it back in the last fiscal year, but what ended up being this fiscal year when they gave us our first portion of it. But it does have to be budgeted.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused. How do we know if we are on budget and in the middle of the biennial, we get an infusement of funds, grant money, and you know, how, I'm just a little confused. How does that fit into the picture?
So what happens is I go to council with their direction of where the money was to be spent, and I do a budget supplement, and that changes the current budget by whatever that budget supplement is. And so in this case, in the next couple months, I will be doing one for $8.8 million. And now that we have direction on where the different monies are going to go, and so that, yeah, now we can do that. Before, it wasn't that much because we didn't have that direction of where the money was going. So, or exactly how much we were going to get. We had an idea, but that was all we had. So we're going to do it with a supplement. And then it'll be part of the budget. And then you'll look and you'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to revenues. The first one, maintain a diversified, stable revenue system. This is pretty hard when a majority of our money comes from property taxes. The good news is it's a pretty stable, a very stable source of revenue. So, but you know, this kind of makes it kind of hard. But it's a good policy to try, and we will. But at the same time, I think it's like, was it 70 or some percent of the general fund revenues are property taxes? So, or 80%. It was a lot. Number two, yes, we do try to collect currently. Right. Number two, we've kind of put on hold for a little bit with COVID and collecting our utility past dues, but that was just kind of what we're doing. So number three, establish user charge fees levels related to full costs. And so this is what we do. We do this as part of the master fees and charges annually. Most of our fees aren't new fees. It's just we're updating fees. If there is a new fee, it'll come in during the year. If it's a new program, or if it's a new fee, we'll add it at the master fees and charges and be highlighted at that point that this is a new fee. But again, we do that, and we do it kind of annually. City will consider market rates. And so this, like when we're looking at, I'll do dog licensing. We're one of 2 cities in all of Clackamas County that has their own dog licensing. Every other city does it through the county. And so how do we kind of set our fee for that? We look at what the county's charging. So, you know, we're kind of looking, and same with Happy Valley's the other city. So we'll look at what they're charging for the same fee. But we do that with everything. Even when we're looking at utility fees and other fees, we do look, I mean, in the master fees, we do compare ourselves to other cities and jurisdictions and everything like that. Just, you know, are we in market or are we not? And so this one, the last one is the enterprise internal service be self-supporting. So these are our true, not just the funds that we're trying to make work like an enterprise fund, but these are our enterprise funds. This is the water fund, the sewer fund, the tennis fund. It was the golf fund, but we moved it because it wasn't very self-supporting into the general fund. So these are the ones that really are supposed to be self-supporting and not getting all this help from the general fund. Really, it's you know, water should pay for itself. It can't pay for anything else, but it should pay for just the water services. Same with sewer. So that's what number 5 is getting at. Moving on to the expenditure policies. So the city shall operate on a current funding basis. You know, this one is part of current budget law. Yeah, you can't overexpend your money. You know, you have X dot, you can't run a deficit. So yeah, that one's what that one's getting at. So the next one is talking about, you know, making immediate corrections. So this is when I go do a budget supplement. Why are we doing a budget supplement? Because, you know, we're a little off on our expenditures. But it also talks about, and that's if I can do that. If I can't, this one's talking about also something like the tourism fund, the last biennium. The tourism fund, we had, you know, revenues up here, but we only got revenues down here. So we had expenditures up here, but we could only spend that much in expenditures. So we just didn't spend them. And so that's the other thing is, you know, don't spend more money than you have. Let's see, city manager shall undertake periodic staff and third-party reviews. And this is going back to process improvements. Staff are always encouraged for not just continuous process improvements. So just because you made an improvement, you might be able to make an improvement on that again, or, you know, and so that's kind of what that's getting at. Or is it a program that isn't needed because we're not doing anything with it? Then, you know, we can eliminate that. We do. If we can get a discount, we do. It's just saying that we should take advantage of any time we can get some kind of discount. Part of that is our purchasing. You know, we have through the state, we have all these different purchasing things we can do to get vehicles less expensive than going out and doing RFPs and stuff like that. So those are expenditure ones. Yes, Al?
Yeah. So I'm just curious about number 3. When it talks about third-party reviews, is that consultant or paid third-party reviews, or is it advisory board reviews, or all of the above?
I think it's primarily third-party consultants coming in and looking at a process. Are we doing something efficiently or not efficient? Is it or is it, and that's just improving our process. The other part is this a program that we don't need, or can we, do another process and then we can just not do that program anymore? And so it usually is a third-party consultant. Okay, now we're moving on to the more fun ones, the fund balance and contingency policies. And so the first one with the general fund, this is where we get that 30% amount that we need at the end of the time. And so this 14%, why 14%? How do we come up with 14%? Well, back in 2009, we consolidated the library fund, the public safety fund, the parks fund, all these funds back into the general fund. Anything that was really using property tax money as their primary focus or funding source, we moved them all back into the general fund. We were just making this arbitrary transfer of property tax money, and so we just moved them all back into there. And when you averaged out their contingency requirements and their dollars, that's just what the dollar amount came to, and it works great. Then the 16% is to get us through our dry spell. That's to get us from July to our property tax money coming in. We need cash. And then so that's what that 30% is. That 30% is also the minimum amount I've ever seen for a triple rated or bond rated entity. We're on the low end on that. So this is actually what gets us our AAA bond rating as well. So we don't really want to, I mean, if we lower this, we'll probably go down in our bond rating. I mean, not even probably, most likely, it's probably a better word for it.
Sean, just out of curiosity, you said this is the low end for a city with our credit rating. What's the range for AAA?
Let's see, ours is at 30. So it was my predecessor. I was the assistant finance director at the time when we were looking at this. So this was back when we did the debt policy renewal update. It was anywhere between 30 and 50%.
Okay, thank you.
But it works for us, but we don't want to go much lower. Let's see. The rest of them are pretty straightforward. The bonded debt one's kind of strange. Ending balance is 100% for the dry period. So the dry period would be, again, that we're talking about property tax money. Our bond payments are done in December and June. So our requirement for our bonded debt one is to get us from July through the first, so basically the first debt service payment is really our, and sometimes our principal's paid in December and sometimes it's paid in June. So it just kind of depends. I usually try to get them in June just because it's easier to do the interest and stuff. And I make sure we have the money versus trying to guess what it is and do a payment in a principal payment in December. But, I always thought this one was kind of weird because we don't ever do this, is no more than 25% of the general fund's reserves may be held in land at any one time. We don't have any reserves held in land. So, yeah. So the fund contingencies required by basically our enterprise funds here. These are the operating contingencies. So this is, for the water treatment plant stuff. This is like in case their electricity comes in more, their chemicals go more, or their sludge removal comes in higher or something. So you have this operating, or we estimated we were going to need so much water, but it was really dry that year. And so now we had to run it more. So we had, use more chemical, all the stuff. This is not really talking much about our fixed asset requirements that we have. So we might have higher reserves in these funds, but it's because we also have capital projects in the next 5 years that we're actually saving for. So this is truly, this 10% is an operating reserve. Then you have engineering at 5%, and then public works is at 3%. I think this is at 3% because public works support services, there are utility crews that actually do the work for the enterprise fund. So anything that actually is paid for out of the enterprise funds themselves. So the vehicles are paid for they're working on those lines. So the contingency really needs to be up here, not down here. But there are a few things that they do pay for, but it's generally up there. And then one of the more important ones, and one that I got to write, so it was kind of fun, was this fund balance one. And this was because there was a GASB that came out in 2014 or something like that. And it was basically saying, in some of your policies, you need to have, it stated, if you have multiple funding sources and different restrictions on the funds being used, which ones do you use first? So we can, from a person reading it, you say you have so much left in the, I don't know, just pick up a fund, the water fund. You have bonded money, you have ratepayer money, you have these different funds. The bond money can only be used on capital, ratepayer money can be used on anything. This is more restricted, but if you don't have these policies, then you don't know how much of your ending balance is restricted to capital projects versus how much of it can be used on anything. And so this one basically says the city will always use the most restrictive funds first. So if you have SDC funds, you have bond funds, and you have property taxes, you're probably going to use the SDCs first because you can only use them on a portion of your capital projects. The bonds can be used on any capital project, and then you're going to use your property tax money. And that's how we're going to actually pay for it on the project. So that's kind of what this one's getting at. This one's actually pretty important. I mean, they're all important, but this one. And if you're reading the financial statements. You have another question, Al? Your hand's still up.
I just had a question about how the contingency amounts are determined. Are they statutory or are they experiential?
They're not statutory.
So basically you're looking at history and past experience and setting, and there are obviously different contingency levels for different funds, which makes sense too. So have we ever been caught by surprise with having an inadequate contingency, or is the practice usually ending up in a surplus?
Both. Now, I don't know if we've ever been surprised. There are sometimes, like, we'll get to our reserves probably faster because of capital. It's usually a capital need that usually will cause us to have to go into these contingencies more than anything else. And I'm thinking more like the street fund. So we don't keep just 10% in the street fund. I mean, there'll be like $3 million in case, for future things. But what happens is a landslide happens and they got to put in a retaining wall for $700,000, $1 million. Well, that wasn't in the budget. That wasn't anywhere. If you don't have money set aside for capital as well, you're then scrambling to get it from, well, the only place our policies let us get it to borrow money from is the general fund. So, then it's coming from there. But no, I don't know if we've ever really been that way. We watch it pretty well, that if things aren't going where they're, revenues aren't coming in, like the tourism fund last year, we just quit spending. But most of them, like I said, are pretty, I would say it's pretty easy to, they just kind of go along like so from it's the capital that you don't know. The capital is what goes like this, the capital needs and what we can do. The rest of it's pretty linear. I mean, this goes up because of inflation, but it's pretty linear.
But it's interesting to me that there's no statutory either from the state or in our own code that sets this, but maybe that's a common practice.
But this is why those policies are so important, which is why we wanted to cover with all of you, is we budget to these policies. So if you see something as a committee or as a council that you don't like, this is the first place to start. Am I making sense?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
So how often are these policies reviewed, especially the ones we just talked about?
It depends. Something might come down statutory from the state that makes us change a policy, relook at a policy. Something might come from GASB, so a federal advisory board that, if you don't follow their rules, then you get a not a good audit. That'll make us change them. Something comes up like we changed the debt policy. It hadn't been updated in years and years and years. So some of them haven't been looked at in quite some time. I mean, we look at them, but we don't change them because they're working. Others, there's something that we want to do, like the debt policy one came out because we wanted to have different, we're doing so much in full faith and credit that we wanted to set some limits or some parameters on how different funding or different entities within the city, say an enterprise like a utility versus urban renewal versus the general fund, different levels of coverage ratios. So how much excess do you have of your operating income after you paid that service? How much, and they all have different levels. We wanted to put in a level because there isn't by statutory a level of how much debt you can issue if it's not asking, like a GO bond asking for the property tax and additional property taxes to pay it if it's getting funded. And so they wanted to put a cap on that. So ours is $250 million. Right now we have about 200 million out there, but it's, so it really depends on what's going on. Like I said, some of them we looked at last year. Some of them we haven't looked at in 10 years.
I thought corporate America reserve policies were complicated. This is amazing.
Let's see. So here's the capital improvement plan policies. Basically, the first one says we're going to have a multi-year CIP. So it comes with the budget. Every time we do the budget process, we update the CIP at the same time. The second one, is really, maintaining our physical assets. Basically saying, let's try to maintain the stuff so we don't have to do a full rebuild. I'm thinking like a road. We're going to go out and do some slurry seals to try to get another 5 or 6 years out of the road and not let it completely deteriorate where you got to, dig it all the way down to the gravel again and then rebuild the whole thing, because it's much cheaper to maintain what you have than it is to continuously rebuild it. So. Again, this is really just talking about the different parts of the CIP. And like I said, this is a process that, when we had an annual budget, we did annually. Now we have a biennial budget, so we do it biannually. And that's, number 4 is just saying have it part of the budget process, which we do them at the identical time. So, I mean, really, as far as the operating budgets, we kind of know because it's kind of the same thing year after year. As long as unless programs change, then they're not. But it's the capital that really changes the budget. How much budget will be spent in that that budget cycle. So, any questions on the CIP policies? Okay, Al. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about this. I mean, in my opinion, this is obviously a big part of the budgeting process, and I often make reference to the rather long section at the very end of each budget document that goes over all of the capital projects. And from time to time, when you might be asked a question about is such and such a thing in the city budget or is it funded, I find to refer to the back of the budget, which has not only the funded projects, but also an even longer list of unfunded projects. And I know there's a difference of opinion about whether we ought to be showing the unfunded ones, but in my personal experience, I find it helpful because I can put it in context. The other thing, if my recollection is correct, Director Cross, you might correct me here, but I think that the dollar volume of unfunded capital programs is about 3 or 4 times larger than the volume of funded programs or something. It's a relationship, something like that.
Yes.
And so I think it helps it helped me when I began to look at that to understand the scope and scale of the capital requirements that a city like ours has. Just a comment.
Okay. Moving on to the capital asset management policies. So number 2 is funding new long-term capital assets of the city will be the responsibility of the community as a whole and should be funded through, different funding. This is really getting at, think of like the water treatment plant. The water treatment plant, the city didn't really reserve any funds for the project. So they didn't raise rates for 10 or 12 years. But so they ended up selling, majority of it was funded by bonds. But then they didn't want to do that again. So, you start to save as a reserve, but is it fair and equitable to the people that are now paying for the plant being redone with paying for those bonds and saving for a reserve? Or, you don't want them to pay for it twice at the same time. So anyways, that's kind of what that one's getting at. 3, 4, really talking about system development charges. And just having those that basically increase the future requirement of something like a size of a pipe or something like that. That one put into a reserve so those future additions can be made. It's just making people that are, basically people that are actually causing this to actually pay for it, even though you might not be doing the work for 10 years to build a bigger pipe, but all this growth is causing it, so have them help pay for it. Scroll down here. Number 5, really just going on about capitalization threshold. We don't capitalize things, so you won't see it in the capital outlay line if it's under $10,000. We know assets or anything that lasts longer than a year. My pen would probably almost be an asset, I guess, to the IRS, but we can't track all that. We're not going to track a $500 computer. We just don't have to. We're really tracking large items. So it's just saying our threshold, we're not going to track anything under $10,000 on our lists. And then the next one's saying that we will actually send it up to the different departments. This was Anthony's favorite when he used to be down at the Public Works. We sent him, about the end of May to do a physical count of all of everything, from the motor pool to street lights, to you name it, and so those things that are over 10,000, we are counting, and it helps us take them off the books or, put them on the books. But yeah, so we're doing physical counts. And then number 7 says the insurance will be, the proper insurance will be. So when we get put assets, we call our insurance company, we get them put on. Every once in a while, the insurance company actually comes out and looks at buildings, and they actually do a valuation. I think they were just doing it this last year for us. So that's just saying that's we need to do that. And then number 8, this is what, we haven't probably looked at this one too much in the last, this is for Ron. We haven't looked at this probably too much for the last 15, 16 years, but GASB 34 was a big pronouncement for government, because we used to not put assets in depreciation and have those kind of schedules like normal for-profit businesses on our statements. This changed everything, and it made it that we had to start doing that. So this is just basically saying that we will continue to do that. And now we have, instead of a small little financial statement like Intel or something that's like 30 pages long, we have a 200-page financial statement annually done. 3 different bases of accounting and stuff. Now we'll go to the debt policies.
Director Cross, I just wanted to do a time check. If I hate to interrupt you.
Okay.
But I just last time we offered to have a break if anyone would like to do it. If we do that, the recording will still be continued. So, does anybody request a break? If any single person does, then I would grant that, I think, appropriately. So anybody looking for a break, or shall we forge ahead?
suggest we forge ahead.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Coming back to the list, Director Cross, can you go back to the list of policies again? I was just thinking of something as you were going through the last. Yeah, so this is perhaps a citywide question, but I don't see a specific cybersecurity policy in this list. And my hunch or guess would be that we have it elsewhere in city practice, operating practice.
It's in
Is
the
that
IT
correct?
department. It's in the IT department. These are just the financial ones.
Okay, and we don't have, I guess that the implication of that is we don't require or need any special protections or security for the financial issues of the city. Is that a correct interpretation of that?
Kind of, I guess. There are things that we have to follow for, our stuff, but generally everything we do is anyone can ask for it. It's not that we don't do anything that's private in finance. So it's all,
Okay.
it's, a public records request can get just about everything.
Okay, thank you.
But I see that we're at 7:05, so I'm going to speed up a little bit if that's all right. So we're going to go to the debt policies. Let's see, the city will, I'm going to go 3. The city will strive to maintain its high bond. And we talked about that. That's really our reserves. That's what gives us, if you look at other cities with half our size, we probably have 8 times the reserves than they have. So that's really what's causing that. And we also go out when we do bonds, we do get 2 ratings. We usually go to S&P and Moody's, and we're only required to get 1, but we always get 2. Number 5, I kind of was alluding to this before. So this is number 5 is talking about the city can only have 3% of its real market value. So total real market value for the city is probably $12.8 billion. We can have up to 3% of that in outstanding GO debt. And that's an Oregon statute. That's what our debt policy is that, we went and said we want them for other things too, but that was the only one that was really by statute. So that to us, we could have almost $400 million worth of GO debt. And I think we have like 20 to 30. It's not very much. Number 7, it's talking about, this is where we wanted to be able to use our full faith and credit. So we get the same. So the city actually has different ratings. It isn't everything in the city is AAA. Our GO rating is AAA. Our if we just went out with one of the utilities, it would be lower. It'd be like AA1 or AA2. And then if we went for Laura went out, they would be even lower. And so what this is basically saying, our policy is the city will pledge its AAA to get the best rates, the smallest reserves that were required by the bond, and then the longest payback. So, if you're not very, like Laura hasn't issued debt since like 2002 itself, it's been using the cities. It would probably have to do a bank placement with a 15-year payback. That's just what they would qualify for. This is allowing them to do up to like a 25-year payback. And so you can do more projects with a longer, just like paying for a house, you get a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. The payments are lower with a 30-year mortgage. So, and then 8, we talked about too. It's already, we're maxing that full faith and credit stuff out at $250 million. If it gets to the point where you do, we will have to change the policy if something came up that obviously council want to do something bigger. But so anyways, that's where I'm speeding up. We'll go to the investment policies. This one was updated in, I think, 15, because I'm the one that did it again. So we've basically followed the short-term funds suggested policy. It's a little bit more strict than what the state statutes allow us to do, but it's what the Oregon Treasury thinks we should do. And it's pretty reasonable. It's not, But I guess what the big thing about it is we don't invest like some people invest. I mean, this is basically our objectives and in order. We want to preserve our invested capital. We don't issue things, debt, or get reserves because, you know, we're trying to make money or anything. There's a project in mind. So we don't really have the ability to make that back. Liquidity, we want it to be able to turn quickly, you know, if we need to get to it. So we're not going to invest anything long-term. So basically not risky, and we can get the cash, and then return. We want to get a return, but that's out of the three, that is our lowest priority. So a lot of our money is sitting in the Treasury's local government investment pool, which gives us the equivalent, I think, of right around, I don't know, between a 1 and 2 year Treasury, but we can get to the money tomorrow. It's like a savings account that has a pretty good return. That's really the biggest part of that to highlight. The policy is basically saying that if we sell bonds, that's number 3, is say we sell $100 million worth of bonds, we can go outside this policy a little bit, ladder it to where we can get the money when we need it for the project. So this is really for everything else. And let's see. Back to our accounting, auditing, and financial reporting policies. First one says that we're basically going to have an annual audit, that's what we do. And then we have the dashboard, so you can actually go back and see stuff daily. I did see the one comment that someone made that I can do instead of the other spreadsheets that gives us a break off, but it'll be yesterday's number. So I can't do it for a quarter. It's going to be through yesterday, but I can use the dashboard if people would rather. But anyways, the dashboard will allow us to look at anyone to go back and look where we're at any time. Number 3, an independent audit will be performed annually. That's a state requirement. We do. We used to have TKW, now Marina, as our auditors. 3 of our counselors are on the audit committee, and so they do that. The city will and so the last one saying we're going to issue our financial statements annually according to generally accepted accounting principles. They're due to the state by December 31st. Usually we have them there by Thanksgiving. Our problem is we have 60 days because we're on this thing called modified accrual. So any payments made through basically the end of August has to get put back in June. So it gives us a few months to actually get the financials done, the audit complete, and then issued. So yes, Councilor Mance.
Yes, I just wanted to quickly point out to the group that we successfully completed our audit, and as over the past many years, our situation is about as ideal as we can be. So many kudos to our staff, many kudos to management. Thank you all. That's it. Thanks.
If there's any other questions, that's the financial policies in a nutshell.
Thank you. That was actually really helpful. I believe Chair Calabria had sent out some materials when I first joined the committee, but actually walking through them and you highlighting some individual items was very beneficial. So thank you.
Any other questions on the policies? I don't see any hands, but yes, thank you, Director Cross, for that. Now, I know that this type of review may not be quite as entertaining as, say, the latest episode of Yellowstone. However, I think that the objective for me anyway, and when we were designing the curriculum for this, was really for the group to gain familiarity, so that we know that if you're asked a question or if we need to have a deeper understanding of where these policies are, they're quite well documented, in my opinion, on the city website, and you know where to look. And of course, if we may also be asked questions that are probably a deeper level of understanding, we may have to resort to calling Director Cross or Jennifer or another professional to help us. But I just think in general, if we look at these meetings we're having in between deliberative cycles, the whole point is really for committee development. So we have a broader awareness and familiarity of where things are and what they mean. Not to be experts. It'd be impossible for us to be experts on something as complex as this. So thank you for putting all that together and for you made it through in very good time. I think we're on schedule. We have another agenda item coming up on the Municipal Grants Review Subcommittee selection. Hello, Councilor Mbouk, welcome. And Member Salehi. So, Jennifer, I was going to ask you if you could bring up the city webpage on the municipal grants. I don't know if everyone is familiar with what these are, but in a nutshell, the city has funds available, and that amount, I believe, if I understand correctly, has been increased this cycle, and they are essentially to be awarded to worthy nonprofit programs and other entities that meet certain criteria. And I know because not everybody has participated in this, there's a little bit of mystery about how these things are determined, but actually the committee, at least as long as I've served on it, has tried to adhere to the guidelines. And you can see some of those here. I'm not going to read these now, but this is also a web page in on the city website, and it's quite well done. And I believe we also have a list. I know we do it for neighborhood enhancement grants, but I'm not sure about municipal grants. I thought that we had a list of awards that were given in the last cycle. Is that correct or not? I know we do it for NEP grants, but I thought we also did it for municipal grants. So you could actually see which organizations received awards. So we actually provide representation as members of the budget committee. And so, sorry, hold on just a minute. Sorry about that. Power. Basically, this part of the meeting, we're going to solicit volunteers to sit on the subcommittee where we will meet. We will receive applications for these municipal grants. We deliberate. We try to match the grant requests up against the criteria and make good judgments on the most deserving and those that qualify. So I don't see that there's a list of the awards that were made in the past, but that's something we might consider too. So the question is, are there any members interested in being part of this subcommittee?
I am potentially, Chair Calabria. What's the time commitment and the time commitment for the process? This
has generally been only one meeting in my recollection, and it is about a 2-hour session. It depends on how many applications are received, and we make a recommendation that is submitted then to council, and council reviews those and approves or refers for more consideration. I saw Vice Chair Carson's hand raised. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to get over to you, Vice Chair Carson.
Yes, I would like to actually nominate someone and also be part of the team. And I think we really do need more than an hour based on what I went through in the previous grant review committee. I don't think everybody was as prepared. If anything, I would like to call for doubling that time to at least 2 1-hour sessions to really look through the grant and then come to a conclusion. Al.
Okay, well, all right. Well, thank you for that recommendation. I see a hand from Member Grindy.
I'd be interested in participating. I would be interested in participating.
Okay,
I would like to
How many
nominate
people-
Shima as well. That's okay.
I think it's okay. I'm not sure if the representation has to be from an official member of the Budget Committee. As you know, Shima is an alternate. Maybe we can get a ruling from the referee. Deputy City Manager Hooper, do you know if the representation to the subcommittee has to be a regular member of the Budget Committee, or can it be an alternate?
As far as I know, there is no rule against it.
Okay.
I believe that you could, so.
Well, I guess the question is, does alternate Salehi wish to accept that suggestion? And then
I would be happy to. My main question, Chair Calabro, was the time commitment, which Elizabeth asked, and I'm more than happy to do the couple of meetings or whatever needs to be. I'd be happy to participate.
Yeah, the answer to that question was, in the past, the meetings there's typically been one meeting, and it would last typically a couple of hours or so. And then the recommendations are made and submitted to council.
Yep, I will be interested.
Okay, great. That's one. Member Zeller?
Oh, I think Councilman Mabupu had his hand raised first.
Oh, Councilor Mbu?
Thank you. Yeah, I would be volunteering too.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilor Mbu.
And I was also raising my hand to volunteer. Thank you.
Okay, noted. So we have Member Salehi, Councilor Mbu, and Member Zeller. Any other members interested in volunteering for the municipal
Member
grants?
Carlin Carson had volunteered as well too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vice Chair Carson?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Got it. I see Member Corrigan's hand up.
I'd be glad to volunteer.
Okay.
How many people are on the committee?
As far as we discussed this, and as far as any of us knows, there is no specification for that. We had the feeling that we must avoid having a quorum of the Budget Committee, however, for reasons of perhaps violating one of the constraints that we have for a public meeting.
No, we have to notice it anyway. I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, so
you can't have a meeting where you're going to make this kind of recommendation to the council without notice. So that's not a problem.
okay, so we were thinking 6 would be a logical
How many did we have
but-
last time?
Pardon?
How many did we have last time?
I would say there were probably 4.
4.
I think at this point we have 5. I think that's plenty, I think.
Okay. Councilor Moop, is your hand still raised?
No, I'm sorry. I'm lowering.
Okay, I just want to make sure we didn't overlook you. Okay, so we have Member Salehi, Councilor Moop, Member Zeller, Vice Chair Carson, and Member Corrigan.
I just wanted to mention that Budget Committee Member Grindy also had been, said that she'd like to participate.
Who's that?
Budget Committee Member Grindy.
Oh, very good. Okay, we have 6. Any other expressions of interest?
And Chair Calabria, could I give a few more details on the municipal grants? That'd be okay?
Sorry.
Would it
Could
be
you
okay
repeat-
for me to give a few more details on the municipal grants? Would that be all right if I did that?
Sure, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so we've upped it to $80,000 as if you recall, Councilor Manns made the motion last budget cycle. It was approved by the committee. So that's the amount. It's been raised significantly from what it was before. I think it was 45,000 before. And they close at the end of March. So we're hoping to have the meeting with the committee in sometime in the mid-April is what we're targeting, to give at least a couple of weeks for everybody to review. And I think we're tentatively looking for April 28th as being the next budget committee meeting, and wanted to put that on the table as a tentative date. Now, if it doesn't work for a lot of people, then we can of course move it. But the reason that we're targeting kind of late in the month is to allow us to have this municipal grant meeting prior to us going to that, so we can discuss the selection.
Okay. Anybody have an issue with April 28th? That was one of the items on the, it's not on the agenda here, but we were going to close with that. Yes, Member Zeller?
Sorry, hit my space bar, meant to mute.
A space bar does that? I didn't know that. Okay. All right, are there any other, I guess we'll be notifying the committee members of the meeting time for the municipal grant once it'll be obviously sometime after the close of the application deadline. So, okay. Any other questions on that? All right, we are running dangerously close to being on time. We'll move on to the session evaluation. That's just my request of you for feedback. And if Jennifer can just show it, it is the same 4 questions. This program was a little different than the last one. Would really appreciate, I know all of you on this call are very, very busy, and but your feedback is really important. I'm committed to trying to improve this and add value to the work that we do together on this committee. So I would really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes and submit your comments on this particular program this evening. So thank you in advance for that. We are, that is the last item of business. Are there any closing comments anyone would like to make? City Manager Bennett, anything? Deputy City Manager Hooper?
Yeah, could you please send the feedback directly to Jennifer so that we have it as part of our public record? And then
yes, thank you.
Then we'll share that with you all. Yep.
Thank you very much. No, that's the right way to do it. Thank you for remembering that. Okay. Is there any further business? I don't see any hands raised. It is actually 4 minutes early by my lights. And so if there is no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 7:27, just like the airplane. Thank you all very much for your participation. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Al. Thank you, Al.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.